This one's not on. Hello. Oh, excellent. Right, a few of you left. Let's make this as interesting as we can, and then we'll let you head off and sail across the Thames to wherever your onward destination. So, as Kerry said, my name's Terry Walby. I am a long-time member of the Global Sourcing Association and CEO and founder of OpenDialog. Hopefully some of you have had the chance to talk to the team at OpenDialog. OpenDialog is a conversational AI platform that's been designed to make it easy for organisations to build conversational interfaces to their systems, to their applications, to their business processes, in order to allow people to converse with them in a completely different way, in a much more natural language way. So an emerging tech that I think is very interesting, and that's some of the topics of what we'll touch on now is emerging technology. A whole bunch of things we've covered over the course of the last few days, but one thing that has come up a lot is best practice, and really it sits at the heart of everything that the GSA does. Is how do we ensure that best practices are adopted, are shared, are iterated, and become standards for what people do. So for me, one of the biggest challenges in getting that is organisations' unwillingness to share their experiences, to share what they've done, to share how they've transformed, and to share why and the outcomes that they achieved. So, I guess, Kerry, I'll come to you first, because I know this is a topic that you wanted to touch on, really. It was, how do we make it easier for organisations? How do we overcome the barriers for organisations sharing what they've done and the outcomes that they've achieved, do you think?
Do you know what, this is my big bugbear with our industry. So our industry is all about partnership, it's all about collaborating. But as an industry, we hardly ever collaborate with each other and share what we're actually doing. So I think we're seeing that change a little bit now. I think the pandemic has made people reevaluate the way that they do share, but I still don't think we're doing it anywhere near enough. Yesterday there was a launch, which obviously I couldn't attend, of a book written by a lady in India, and it was all about how India had made itself, this massive IT industry, all based on the premise that the big service providers were just going to share and share and share everything they were doing to put India first and really, really grow. So that's a fantastic example where it has worked. I don't think we're quite so good at it here in the UK, but we are making that change, and that's why we launched yesterday the GSA standard terms for contracting, which we're really, really excited about. I think that's going to make a big difference to levelling the playing field between enterprise buyers and some of the smaller service providers, but making practice much more consistent. We also yesterday announced our approach to a standardised questionnaire for looking at the sustainability of service providers. And also what we wanted to discuss and launch today was the launch of the GSA automation repository. So we're firm believers that automation, and I think I might just turn
Killed the mic.
I've died in the hole.
Borrow one of these.
You've worn it out.
Sorry, okay. Thank you. Yeah, is that working again? Yep. So I'm a firm believer that automation works. I think it was overhyped in the first instance. It does deliver benefits, but perhaps not the benefits of the initial sort of stats that Gartner was quoting when it first emerged a few years ago. But I think automation would be deployed so much more if we did a much better job of sharing the processes that could be automated. So we at the GSA have been working with a number of our members, Blue Prism being one, but some of our users of technology, so the NHS Royal London and the NHS Trusts, to look at the way that processes are being automated, to capture those different processes and put them into an automation repository so that everybody can actually understand what the art of the possible with automation is. So, it's very brief, but it is going to be our approach to a broader scale adoption of automation, a way of promoting more best practice about automation, and also a really good solution to the global talent crisis to automate more and do it more consistently. So it's a short approach to the launch, but that's really what we're trying to do.
Fantastic, thank you, Kerry. Sarah, I'm keen to come to you on this one because Obviously, you talked about some case studies in your book, and there are clearly organisations that have allowed you to name them, to talk about what they're doing. So they've embraced, willingly embraced, allowing you to case study them. And obviously, I'm very conscious that in your career at Everest, you spent a lot of time talking to customers about what they were doing. And I wonder, firstly, how have you found people responding to you asking them for case studies, and has it differed in the context of you as an author of a book and you as an analyst, an industry analyst?
It wasn't easy to get them. There were several that actually told me a load of stuff, but I wasn't allowed to name them, and I was adamant that I needed named case studies in the book, because otherwise it just wouldn't prove the points that I was trying to prove. So it's difficult. They really don't like talking about what they consider to be their unique selling points and how they achieve it. They want to talk about their unique selling points, but they don't want to say how they achieve those. So, and then getting everything fact-checked and so on was quite time-consuming, but I do find that I got better response because it was a book. The trouble is, they get asked, the ones that are willing to share then get asked a lot, and it is quite time-consuming for them. Yep. So I think if we have a repository where we can, sort of post things when we have time, I think that would be really good. And I think it is something that is missing in our industry, the ability to share knowledge and reuse things, definitely.
Yeah, I think our experience has been that most case studies are written by this provider of the service, and their aim is to promote the service that they delivered to other customers, and therefore that maybe fuels some of the reluctance. Boris, as a service provider, your colleague there talked about a case study at the end there, but I don't think named the customer. And is that an example of a reluctance of organisations to share?
First of all, I would like to say thank you to Kerry, just because it's first time when you can be on stage in Hawaii short. So it's like, thank you so much. But even more important, actually, what GSA does, it's actually standardization of processes, and it's like some kind of like best practices that already, like, let's say, they disclosed by all providers and actually customers and all the organizations, and this is great. Great just because you have already some ground, some base for, let's say, that this like non-disclosure from, especially from like all customer organizations. Yes, I'm on provider side, and we do have this problem. We have probably like 90% of our case studies on our website, they are no name. No matter what you do, no matter how you try, your clients tell no. Unfortunately, it's like a very, very common case, and then actually you're in positions that yes, we did like tons of great applications, enterprise systems, and everything, but no name. Yes, it's a problem. Actually, I don't have any kind of recipe of what to do about that. So I would be glad, like, to disclose names of our clients. Actually, like one of like big healthcare client, I believe that you have like half of you have like gadget on your hand, fitness one, but no name.
Yeah, understood. Paul, Nigel, maybe you can give us a perspective from a legal position, because in my experience, some of the reasons that customers cite for not allowing you to disclose is, we're not allowed to, we're not permitted to. I mean, is there any legal precedent that would prevent somebody talking about what they've done or should?
Well, I suppose the answer is both yes and no, depending on what you're talking about. So quite often you see people cite and go, oh, GDPR, couldn't possibly tell you anything with GDPR. And actually, they're just using it as an excuse. It isn't actually a GDPR issue. What tends to drive it is protection of intellectual property, protection of strategy. And quite often the things that we're dealing with, clients want to be first to market, or they want to do something that gives them the competitive edge over the people they're competing against, and that's why they don't want it sort of shouted about at particular times. And also what you find is I think certainly we as lawyers have the same problem as Boris does, is that we have duties of confidentiality and have to be careful about what we say. Some clients take a very sort of blanket approach. We just don't talk about it. Others are much more open, but you sort of need to have a grown-up conversation about them, say this is how I want to use it, and there's a trust factor that you won't abuse that sort of sharing. You know, you'll be able to share so much, but not go too far. And I think that's what we're seeing. But from a legal issue, it tends to be data, intellectual property, and confidentiality is the things that sort of restrict it. And certainly probably in Boris's contracts, there'll be a clause that says no publicity without your customer's permission, which, you know, you can blame me for that one, I'm sorry.
There is no logical explanations. It's like not about IP protection or anything. So it's like it's better like to keep silent.
Yeah.
That's all.
It's quite often, I mean, we have the same discussion. It's a strategic issue. It's not that they don't want to help you as their provider. They're quite happy to do that. But sometimes their internal process is just, the person you're dealing with is not worth the grief, you know, to sort of jump through it and get that permission for you is the challenge you see.
We have had like unfair case. One of the clients, they simply requested 10% discount. Then it's like, no value.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think you're right. I think it can be an instinctive thing. It's easier to say no for an individual than to, excuse me, maybe to ask for the permissions or run the risk of being admonished for doing something incorrectly. And I guess there's an innate human desire to keep things to yourself. It's the classic, child doing their exam that puts their hand over the answers, so the guy sitting next to a girl sitting next to you can't see what they're doing and steal your work. Actually, we should be sharing more freely. We should be opening up and saying, look at what I've done. It's what makes the world a better place.
Just on that, sorry, because that's obviously Paul's answer talks about how we treat our clients and their confidentiality in terms of how we treat our own IP and our own confidentiality are the terms and conditions that we create for clients. Actually, internally we share that, but actually as an industry we don't share that, except actually that's exactly what GSA are now helping us to do with more standard terms that actually it means you hopefully get from deal initiation to contract signature a whole lot easier without arguing about the same points that the lawyers would argue about unnecessarily without some form of standardisation. So standardisation is creeping into businesses' standard terms of business.
Yeah, understood. Thank you. I'm going to pick up on that question, but if there are any questions from the floor before I go there, let me just go out, and maybe Chris has got a question. Let's deliver you the mic, Chris.
I'll meet you halfway. Thanks. I just wanted to take it right back to the start of many of these processes. We've talked about it throughout the last couple of days, and it starts with the specification of need. I think Graham touched on this topic, I felt, when he was giving his presentation yesterday, the guy from John Lewis, who was frustrated that his suppliers were trying to essentially unearth need so that they could make a sale. And I know that buyers will sometimes get frustrated by these, and the suppliers, I think, are just trying to search for opportunity. And the question I have is, how well in this particular arena, how well do you find that needs are being specified? What is the quality of those specifications? In my experience, it's always been something of a challenge. And the follow-up question to that is, what would make a difference to the quality of the specification of a need?
That's a big question, Chris. Who's it for?
Well, I suspect that everybody has probably got a view. So I thought Boris would be really interested from his perspective.
I'm ready. Chris, we don't have such problem. Actually, we tell our clients that let's start from half-page description in English, what you want to achieve, and that's sufficient. In our age, actually, so let's say that last time I've seen specification for a software system, it was in the 90s. It was like special people, business analysts that actually developed specification first, and then we actually started like coding. But with agile methodologies and all this like agile world, it's like even like it's not only like unnecessary. It's like already I don't know. So it's like it would be just even like prevent you from achieving like success. And the thing is very simple. When you it's great when you have an idea what you would like to achieve, but when you start development and you probe your product, whatever, it's not only software, whatever it is. So it's like you unavoidably you have like some change during the process. In all the obsolete engineering technologies, they actually, when you have specification, change is not allowed during development. But then you have a wrong product at the end. So it's like, for me, specification is like a bad thing. So it's like, let's do like functions, let's do achieve like small stages, and you will get what you want to get, or what it becomes necessary by the end of the development. It's like totally different things that are actually what it was initially. So like something like that.
Well, I've seen the opposite, which is, in outsourcing, you get outsourcers thinking they are getting a contract for doing certain things, and then when they start the contract, they find the process bears no resemblance to what they were told. It actually doesn't do any of the steps that they were told that it goes through, and so they have a huge delta, if you like, in the variation, and it can cost them a lot of money to fix that problem, basically. And I think this is where some of the newer technologies, like where you mine a process and you identify how it's actually run, that would help with that kind of thing. So you automatically identify the steps and you document them, and that's why a lot of them are now doing that. They're actually developing their own process and desktop mining applications that will help them with that kind of thing. So again, technology to the rescue. But then you have to get permission from the client to allow them to use those software on their machines. That it's never easy, but there is often a gap.
Probably what I would just add to that is, because I sit as the lawyer seeing both those things, so ideally I'd sit on this side of the fence where I have an absolute specification. I can say absolutely what you're getting, but quite often we get exactly what Boris has described, which is more of an iterative process. And you, as a customer, you need to go in and understand your risk appetite for that. So if you spend a certain amount of money and don't get what you want, are you happy that was the process, sort of type thing? And that's quite challenging, particularly if you're on a tight budget. But to Boris's point, you get more flexibility, that you might have asked for one thing, but actually you get what you want at the end of it, but you have less certainty over cost. So it's a balancing act to be done with all of this. And what I think also from a supplier perspective is there needs to be more flexibility in that you do it in sort of stages with sort of exit ramps at certain points, I think is the way sometimes people can get comfortable with the risk that, hey, if this is not heading the direction we like, we can exit. And then the other thing we see is also there's a trust factor. So lawyers have no trust, I'm afraid. I'm sorry, that's the way we're trained. But in fact, it's a trust factor that if you know the supplier and you've worked with them regularly, you sort of know what you're getting already without a specification. And you also have a wider relationship. So we quite often talk about what's the non-legal remedies if things go wrong. Do you have other business with them? Can you leverage that to get it fixed and things like that? And that's the way you can balance against that sort of certainty around the sort of hard specification sort of type thing. Yeah.
I think there's a little bit about where the instructions are coming from. So if you're working for a large multinational with a sophisticated procurement department, then actually they've probably done some digging with the business as to what it is that they exactly want to procure. So actually the specification of what they want to buy is clearer and is less negotiable. If the instructions are coming out of the business directly, or possibly the internal legal team who've been instructed by the business and the entrepreneurial director, then actually they probably have much more of a wing and a prayer about what they know they want to achieve, but actually that's going to be an iterative process.
Good stuff, thank you. And I guess if I add a bit of flavour from my perspective, which is slightly different because we're a provider of an emerging technology platform, and actually by definition, well not by definition, the platform has a myriad of uses that it can be put to. And it will be it's very easy as a technology provider, and I spent many years working in RPA and automation where providers were just selling the technology without a view, without even a care actually about what customers were doing with it. And I think one of the things that's important as a provider of technology is that you do understand the outcome that's being delivered. Whether you're contracted to deliver the outcome or not, why is somebody buying your software? It's to deliver something of value. And I think it's really vitally important that you do identify that. But my experience is customers don't always know. They need help to help to get to the point of, well, what exactly are you going to try and achieve here? And is this the right thing for you? Because it isn't always. Okay, any more from the floor? William, sorry, I'm going to steal your mic again, Kerry.
So my other life outside of this is in the music industry, and of course in the music industry, NFTs have just shot off. Everyone's at ease with them, at ease with the metaverse. You have DJ gigs in Roblox, and DJs been paid millions of dollars to do them, and maybe because music is all about rights and it's all about IP. But I wondered, from what you're seeing in the deals and the clients that are coming to you, what are the next sector where this might be far more prevalent? Because music's great in one place, but there has to be a wider use for this really to take off in a big way.
So what we're talking about is, you're absolutely right, is that NFTs are particularly being seen as sort of entertainment type structure. So it's almost the radio to TV to metaverse. Do you know what I mean? There's a sort of flow, and it's a platform within which you do it. I've been looking at NFTs and blockchain technology probably for nigh on 10 years now, so it's actually not that new. It's been around. I remember about 10 years ago going to a similar conference, and someone described blockchain as a solution looking for a problem. That was its sort of description to start with. But what people have been doing is experimenting with it. And I think what we're now seeing with blockchain and with NFTs is that while it's good in a sort of entertainment rights type concept, it's that certification, it's that validation. So again, about it must have been at least 10 years ago, there was I think it was a Chinese bank came and they wanted to set up a sort of electronic document exchange. So we're not talking NFTs or blockchain or anything, but it was all about shipping documents. So bills of lading and how do I collect my goods when it's shipped out of China and things like that. And it was all done very manually, sending physical bits of paper, and they wanted to create this electronic document exchange. The trouble with that structure was that you had to trust the bank that was doing it, and the bank had to have the network in order to make it work. What's interesting about this new technology is you require less of that sort of single player that wants to set it up, and I think that's where you're going to see the future of it is things where you have those processes you want to trust, but you don't necessarily need a sort of guardian of that trust, as it were, with the technology in terms of how you manage rights. So my view, it's things like certifications. We're seeing emissions. There's a lot of regulation coming down the track about, like, can you track and trace your emissions, for example? And you'll be seeing this technology trying to be deployed in that because it's decentralized and anyone can use it, and it makes it easier to follow. So I think that's probably the business application as opposed to the entertainment application, if that makes sense.
And do you, just finally on the blockchain piece, of course, the media being the media, they go on the negative. And this discussion, when I chat to anybody, even in the US about blockchain, yes, and crypto, they talk about the terrible impact on the environment. I'm just interested to get your thoughts, or the thoughts of the whole panel, is how much of that is real and how much of it will just simply fade away?
So we've actually had that question in that we have clients looking to use NFTs in a particular project. And so one of the fundamental questions they were looking at, which is which minting platform and which wallets and things do you use in terms of what is the energy consumption of those. And there are platforms that are trying to say that they're more green, in that they're using more renewable energy, and the technology that they use, it's not as bad for the environment. So it is an issue, and it is something that they're alive to. But it's not that the technology per se is sort of environmentally unfriendly. It's the energy consumption that's the challenge. And of course, it's the same question you're getting with things like what was it? I think it's green hydrogen, blue hydrogen, those sort of type things. The same question, which is, it sounds green, but actually if the process is consuming more than you're delivering, then you have a problem. I think the issues are identical with NFTs and blockchain. So.
I think it is a real issue. I think, I mean, just reading up over the last couple of days, the figure I heard quoted is that the Bitcoin alone uses more electricity per year than Poland does. That is an industry that is potentially very unsustainable.
Thanks. Great.
Good stuff. Okay, let me come back to a kind of broader topic, and that's kind of generally thinking about digital transformation, some of the stuff we've talked about. And I know it's another bugbear of yours, Kerry, that that organisations look at transformation initiatives too tactically, too piecemeal. So how do you think organisations should ensure adoption of new technologies, of transformation initiatives are really bedded into their culture? What do you think we've learnt from organisations that are members of the GSA?
Do you want to rephrase that question? I'm not completely sure what you're asking there.
We talk about tactical initiatives around automation or transformation being at the departmental level. How do you get them across an organisation more effectively, do you think?
Well, yeah, but it's our nirvana that Chris and I were talking about when we opened up. We called it perfect sourcing. We were told there's no such thing as perfect sourcing, but we're just like, no, it's an aspiration. And it is, it is much more joined up business, really, isn't it, at the end of the day? So, from our perspective, we really want to see it not being something that just the business prescribes or that procurement prescribes. For us it is transcending the business requirement, bringing in procurement, bringing in legal, contracting, bringing in technology, bringing in finance and operations. All of those parts of the business need to work collaboratively, specifically when they are obviously very major projects and full scale transformation. It's not to be siloed. That is basically the message. It really does need to transcend the entire business to really deliver. And that is our approach to strategic sourcing. And our belief that the best performing companies have a strategic sourcing function where they do actually work collaboratively across the business to deliver what they're trying to deliver. So hopefully that answers the question.
It does, thank you. Very good. Probably the poorly phrased question. But okay, slightly different topic now. I just wanted to touch on, we talked a lot about changing practices for delivering outcomes, about open talent, about using resources from different geographies as part of a blended resourcing model, of using in-house, of using external, of using freelance, all of these things in the mix. And I just wonder, have we alongside that, there are probably different challenges around IP ownership. So arguably you can lock that down by saying anything that's created by someone on your behalf you own, but it's probably more complex than that. So I'm interested in the perspective of, are there some trends in IP ownership that go alongside this changing resource model landscape? I guess a question first for the lawyers in the room.
Yeah, so I think the answer is actually there's nothing new there. It's the interesting thing. So we've been doing outsourcing for decades, call centres, the idea of sort of outsourcing, programming to India or other countries has been happening for many years. And from a lawyer's perspective, there's a combination of things in terms of protecting it. So you have the legal rights in your agreement. You need to consider the jurisdictions in which you're operating. But the third thing is also the physical barriers. So once you look at the legal rights, it's a bit like the recipe for Coca-Cola, only 3 people in the world or whatever know it, and they're not allowed to fly on the same plane at the same time, sort of type thing. You have to have those sort of physical barriers to protect those rights. So sometimes what that means is you give a piece of the puzzle to particular people that you're sourcing to, but they can't see the whole picture, which is one way of having that sort of physical protection. And it's also a question of risk management. Like there's no point sort of sweating stuff that actually probably doesn't matter too much, but if you suddenly see your brand being replicated or ripped off, you might be a lot more sort of stringent about it. And so it's very much a sort of taking a risk-based approach to, I think, how you own those rights and how you develop it. The one that gets interesting often is there's a bit of an obsession with ownership of rights, and that's not always the right solution. So you can spend a lot of time arguing who owns this intangible thing I can't see. whereas actually IP has got infinite flexibility with sort of licensing and ability to have the equivalency of ownership and things like that. So the good news is if you do it right, you can have lots more flexibility about how you use it and how you share it. I think coming back to your original point about sort of sharing between the industries and making sure it's used in the correct way, sort of type thing.
Fantastic, thank you. Anybody else want to come in on that one?
I can add actually. So let's say that. As we already, in Irina's presentation, she actually told that our hiring place is the world. And it's exactly true. Right now we have already employees in 20 countries. And we simply hire talent where it's available. It's already, let's say that the time when it's was for convenience, I will form my team, for example, in Kingston, so it's gone forever. So, but it's already some technical issue where to take or where to find suitable people. Right now, actually, it's probably the beginning of the trend, but every organization is going to feel it, and it's totally strategic. Just because, let's say that the new generation, as we see, the new generation of people, the most young one, the new generation of 21st century, Zoomers or Z generations, how you call them, they actually not going to work for anyone. Let's say that usually all the organizations, they have their goals and they form teams. And actually that people simply a resource that actually satisfy your goal. It's not going to be this is not going to work. Let's say that we feel it already in software development just because it's probably more advanced, more educated. But all these new people, they actually would like to see impact and would like to see the purpose in your organization. And then actually you have to change your strategy and your goals. Just like these people, they are not going to work in opposite case at all. And it's very interesting just because, again, it's not goal resources. It's team, and then actually let's do something that they would like to do.
Just on that subject of open talent, I mean, it was Barry Matthews that said yesterday there are now more than 600 open talent platforms. So that industry is growing like topsy. And of course, their value add, or one of their many value adds, is the fact that they will be looking after, the local tax compliance, employment laws for whatever the individuals comprising your new virtual open talent team are, but also ensuring that the intellectual property is being looked after in the way you as the end customer want it to be looked after. So, fascinating space.
Certainly is. Lots
what I was going to say, Terry, was there is the talent issue, but there are other factors that will change the way that organizations work, and that is simply the war in Ukraine. It's shown us that, we now live in a different kind of world, and there's a lot of concern about China and having Taiwan and Korea very close to China. So I've read articles where US manufacturers are now worried about the chips that are made in Taiwan and some of the other work that's going on in South Korea. So, I think there will be some tightening of, sourcing around that kind of thing because of the political situation in the world, because everybody's worried about China invading Taiwan, and unfortunately geopolitics are going to make the picture even muddier than it is now.
Yeah, very true. And of course the last thing those destinations need is for business to be withdrawn. And we spent some time talking to the IT Ukraine Association about what they need in these times of trouble, and actually what they said was give us more work to do, because actually that's going to underpin our economy, underpin our ability to survive the other side of this conflict, and underpin our sustainability. So don't withdraw. In fact, go the other way. Give us more to do. It'll help the economy. Donations will come and go, but a business relationship lasts forever, to quote him directly. So very interesting. Okay. One of the other things I just wanted to pick up on, and I think you mentioned it, Sarah, it was mentioned a couple of times over the course of the last couple of days, was this move to more of a citizen developer landscape where individuals within the organisation, I think maybe from the NHS touched it as well, individuals within the organisation are developing solutions because the solutions have been delivered with interfaces that are more usable by a non-technical person. So, as a result of citizen development becoming more prolific and the tools and applications that are being produced being easier for non-technical people to use, do you think software development is going to become redundant?
No, I think what we're seeing, not for the time being anyway, until we get code generation, that kind of thing. But at the moment, the low-code platforms aren't good enough. They all need somebody who's a specialist to finish them or help and support the citizen developer. So I do think they will relieve some of the pressure on resources, though, because of the shortage of programmers. I think that they will help, but they're not going to get rid of the whole requirement completely, not for a long time yet.
Understood. I assume you'd agree, Boris. You don't think the...
Absolutely not. So it's not going to happen. It's not going to happen ever, just because nobody is that smart to automate all the software that is necessary to develop. So it's not possible. It's even with all the AI techniques that actually in place already, it's not going to happen.
Very good, thank you. A couple more from me, but any more from the floor before we do? No, fantastic. Okay, so you mentioned AI, Boris. So I'm another topic that regularly bubbles to the surface when we think about AI, and obviously this is a world I live in and occupy. Is how do we ensure that artificial intelligence, which by definition is machines doing something they haven't been explicitly programmed to do? So that's my simplistic definition of it. You haven't laid out a process of flow. You're allowing the machine to make autonomous decisions. In that world, how do we ensure that AI is being deployed ethically, and what approaches could we take to governing ethical deployment of AI?
Well, it's not possible. Actually, deployment depends on humans. And humans, they are different. You can write contracts, you can do whatever you want to do, but humans are going to do what they want to do. That's all. So it's going to be a lot of unethical deployment of AI. China is a good example. The applications that track Uyghurs, it's perfect AI, but it's unethical AI. In my native Belarus, I'm originally from Belarus, there is one IT company under sanctions just because they develop software that right now they use for all the protests of 2020. They identify people and all people go to jail. So guys, it's ethical employment of AI. We already have it.
Yeah, Sarah, any thoughts?
Yes, certainly. So I think there will always be bad applications, bad implementations and uses of AI, and we can only police as best as we can, and we can't do anything about where there are political issues, there are dictatorships, and China is a terrible place at the moment because I don't know if you saw, they've got when people were locked in Shanghai because they had a lockdown, they had robotic dogs running around announcing what they were supposed to be doing next. It's literally like a vision of the future, of a dystopian future today.
1984.
Yeah, literally. And that really is scary. And, I think as the industry, though, we can do things to help what we develop to be ethical. And we can only do that by educating the developers to think about the consequences of what they're doing and do the best that we can with things like its training, making sure that we have good enough data, that it's large enough sample, and so on. But it's not just an AI problem, it's a technology problem as a whole. Because some of the issues that we had with Facebook, for example, wasn't just to do with AI. It was about sharing data, and it's really humans, learning to do best practice, doing ethical practice of how data and technology is used, that we need to get to grips with. And I hear a lot about the ethics of AI, and I think, what about the ethics of the rest of it,
Yeah, can I just jump on in there? So yeah, of course, we see lots of examples of conscious and unconscious bias in the use of AI. At the moment, it seems that quite often it lands the responsibility with the law team as to, is the use of this technology going to be ethical? We're doing quite a lot of work to bring it out into what's the role of procurement and sourcing. They need to be responsible as well as to, do they know exactly how this technology is going to be deployed, and is it going to be deployed ethically? And I don't think there's enough understanding there to for them to actually take the responsibility and be part of the overall accountability of it. So, important area.
Just to the note, Intetics, my company, it's actually Internet Technology Ethics. Very unusual for business, but unfortunately, so it's ethical agenda is like Western agenda. When we're talking about East, it's quite opposite agenda. For me, it's very, very weak point for the old Western countries, just because you're trying to apply some advanced social concepts to the society that actually totally ignore these social concepts. And for example, news of yesterday, Moscow University, they started a new department for cyber warfare. It's going to be special specializations how to actually do cyber wars. Very ethical application of IT.
As if they weren't doing it already. Yeah.
Absolutely.
It's that official.
Okay, brilliant. Right, last question then, and then we'll let you all go off and get the ferry and stuff. But either based on what you've heard the last couple of days, or if you haven't been around, Sarah, I know you went here yesterday, a more broader perspective, but what do you think is the next big wave of innovation? Gents, you talked about some current waves of innovation, so don't mention those ones, but what's coming next down the line? I'll start with you, Kerry. What do you think is the biggest innovation or into this industry that's either come out the last couple of days or...
Can I go last, please?
Okay, you can go
Thank
last.
you.
Sarah, I'll go to you then.
Well, I think when you do automate and you capture a lot of data, you can actually see more opportunities for how and where things could be improved. So you become more innovative as a company anyway. And I don't think, I don't know about a big innovation, but I think there'll be a lot of smaller innovations. So in my book, I talk about microservices, for example, where the opportunities will come where you can, for example, outsource the picking of fruit to actually packing them into punnets. Literally that part of the process of the farming and crop collection sort of process, because there are companies that do the machines that pick the fruit. Identify the fruit from the leaves and actually pick it. So I think that we'll see a lot of that kind of thing. And there's, we talked about the music industry. There are already companies that use AI to write tunes for, things like jingles for adverts and so on. So there's going to be a lot of that kind of new developments that are powered by AI, but they're not groundbreaking. Well, they are groundbreaking, but they're not breathtaking, like a moonshot kind of thing.
Understand. So AI microservices. Thank you. Paul?
I think, you're already seeing it now, but you're going to see a lot more, I think, robotics in our life. It's going to become more sort of normal, as it were. So you talk about drone deliveries and other things, but I think autonomous cars, those things they're not that far away, whereas even 5 years ago, you might have gone that science fiction sort of type things. And the other one I think we're seeing more people experimenting with is this concept of augmented reality. I think complete virtual reality is still going to be entertainment, but the augmented reality is the thing you'll see in your life much more, and will come slowly. The technology is happening, it's just taking time. So.
Got it. Nigel?
Yes, steering away from technology, actually, I think there's sort of two themes in a way, in that they completely oppose each other. One is, on one side, you're seeing slightly more protectionist activities, so around Ukraine, around China, and so on. But on the other side, we've actually got need for greater collaboration, and there's a recognition of We heard it here quite a few times yesterday of working in partnership, working for a single purpose, working collaboratively. So, open source technologies come along. There is a increasingly greater ability to share knowledge and IP and ways of delivering, and yet that's going to contrast in some ways around with different parts of the world with quite protectionist. So I think interested to see how that plays out.
Fantastic, thank you. And yeah, the question was innovation as opposed to technology specifically, so thanks for picking that up. Boris?
For me, it's actually the whole set of geospatial technologies. If you just look around, it's probably the biggest impact from the last decade on our life. Count on all the navigation systems, count on all these location-based services, count on automatic driving. So it's I cannot drive already without adaptive cruise control. So it's tons of different applications. And imagine, for example, drones. Drones is probably the biggest impact on our life again, so for the last decade. But let's say that for the future, it's probably the best to watch Hollywood movies, they know.
Fantastic. Kerry?
I guess for me, it is going to be the way that companies partner with diverse suppliers, I think. So it's like the changing sourcing ecosystem, the opportunity to work with companies and individuals all around the world. So listening to what Bangladesh have to offer, what Mauritius have to offer, what Vietnam have to offer, the innovations and the innovative companies that are doing really, really cool stuff all around the world that I don't think any of us had really opened our eyes to. So I think it is the opportunity to partner with really cool, innovative companies that bring much more value back to our businesses here in the UK. It's probably the takeout for me. And then also smaller and more diverse partners, whether they're here in the UK or elsewhere around the world.
Fantastic, all great answers, thank you. But I've got the mic, so I get the last one. For me, it's I think conversation is going to change the way humans and computer systems interact. And I think it's going to be fascinating to see how that gets deployed and how in a year, in 2 years, in 5 years' time, how different our interaction with the systems and processes that we use to get work done are going to be. So fascinating stuff. Okay, thank you very much to our panel. Round of applause, and then I'll hand back to Kerry for a close.
Yes, thank you very much to everybody on the panel. Really appreciate you joining and staying with us when we don't have the biggest audience left in the room. But yes, they are all fantastic, fabulous, quality individuals that we've got left in the room. So I think they all deserve a round of applause as well. Thank you very much for staying with us. So huge thanks to my team, and I thank you still, because we still got 42 hay bales that we need to get off this island before 6 p.m. So yeah, thanks for that, guys. Really appreciate ongoing support there. And if everybody could take a hay bale with them and just drop it off at the jetty, that would be much appreciated. No, Joke in the AV team is going to help us with that. So huge thanks to Basis as our headline sponsors. I hope this is just the very beginning of putting Bangladesh on the map. You've got 13% of your exports going to the UK. Hopefully by this time next year you can say that figure has increased significantly. So we work, and we pledge to work with you on continuing to build the profile of Bangladesh and Basis and the great work that you do. So yeah, basically it's a wrap. Really want to find out from everybody whether they think the festival is the way forward, or whether you'd prefer to sit in an office without any windows, in an auditorium, in a law firm, no disrespect to our lawyers there, in a law firm's offices in central London, or whether we should be doing something like this again and how we should do it differently. But thank you very much to all of our sponsors, all of our speakers, and to all of our delegates, and to our fab team, both on the AV side and obviously on the event management and hay bale lumping side of things. Thank you all very much. Most important announcement is we still have lots of beers available and wine on the lawn, so please feel free to join us for some final farewell drinks before we completely pack down. Thank you.